The day the laws of biology died. The last city with running water was Oslo. That was 3 weeks ago. Now Dr. Harlan Voss sat in a bunker beneath the Himalayas, watching a man volunteer to have his DNA unmade. "You understand what this does," Harlan said. "Not a question." Subject 0, a former Marine named Rewritten, smiled. "It kills me. Or it doesn't." The nanites went in at 11:04 p.m. At 11:09, Cole's heart stopped. Every screen in the lab died. Every light. Every sensor. Then Cole sat up. His voice came out wrong, layered, like 3 radio stations at once. "I can hear the satellites." Harlan stared at the man who used to be human. Outside, the Federation siphons kept drinking the sky. They didn't know yet what they just created. Biology died, or humanity died. The starving started with the children. That was always how it went, wasn't it? The smallest bodies burning through their reserves first. The world's cruelty scaling perfectly to the size of its victims. In the footage cycling across every remaining broadcast, most satellites were dead now, but a few still limped along, picking up signal ghosts. You could see the cities contracting. Oslo, once lit like a circuit board from orbit, had gone dark at the edges first, the suburbs surrendering power to keep the hospitals running. Then the hospitals went. Then the hospitals after those hospitals. The Federation siphons were elegant machines, and that was perhaps the worst part. There was no drama in them, no visible beam, no Hollywood light show. They simply hung in low orbit, 3,000 of them in a distributed mesh, and they drank. Atmospheric nitrogen, first, then trace oxygen, then, with the precision of something that had been doing this for 11,000 years across 47 worlds, they began sipping the magnetic field itself. Not enough to trigger a geomagnetic event, just enough to make the sky thin, just enough to let the cosmic radiation seep in, just enough to make the growing season shorter, the crops weaker, the skin cancers more frequent. Slow, patient, inevitable. Dr. Harlan Voss had been watching the siphons on radar for 19 months. He had 14 screens in his office, buried 400 meters beneath the Nanda Devi Glacier, in a facility that officially did not exist, and every one of them showed a different piece of the same catastrophe. Crop yields, atmospheric pressure gradients, viral infection rates in immunocompromised populations, the slow statistical drumbeat of a civilization being quietly murdered. He was 53 years old. He had a daughter in what remained of Zurich. He hadn't spoken to her in 6 months because the last satellite relay covering Central Europe had been knocked out by a micrometeorite event, which was what the Federation's diplomatic corps called deliberate infrastructure sabotage when they wanted to seem apologetic. Harlan wasn't thinking about any of this when Rewritten walked into Lab 7 and sat down in the white chair. He was thinking about mitochondria. Specifically, he was thinking about a sequence in human mitochondrial DNA that had no business being there, a string of base pairs that appeared in no other species on Earth, that showed no evolutionary antecedent, that several of his colleagues had quietly flagged as anomalous, and then promptly stopped talking about when the Federation's advisory committee had recommended their research grants be redirected. The sequence looked, under certain modeling conditions, like an instruction set. Not for the body it lived in, for something the body could become, given sufficient external pressure, given, for instance, atomic-level nanite intervention and a catastrophic amount of physical stress. Harlan had been calling it the Hydra Protocol for 8 months. He'd been calling it that privately, in notes he kept encrypted on an air-gap drive, because Hydra Protocol was the kind of name that made biosafety committees nervous. The name implied regeneration, adaptation, the replacement of severed heads with something worse. He preferred accuracy. Rewritten was 31 years old, former Marine Raider, presently unemployed because his unit had been quietly disbanded when the Federation's Earth Liaison Office had recommended that humanity reduce its standing military forces as a gesture of good faith. He had a calm face and steady hands, and he'd read every page of Harlan's research twice, which was more than most people managed once. He sat in the white chair with the easy posture of someone who had spent years learning to be comfortable in uncomfortable situations. Walk me through it again, Cole said. Not because he didn't understand, because he wanted to hear Harlan say out loud. Harlan pulled up the hologram. The double helix rotated slowly in the cold air of Lab 7. The nanites go in through the bloodstream. They're not designed to add anything. They're designed to read the existing sequence and then apply mechanical stress to specific base pairs. Think of it like the DNA is a piano that's never been played. The nanites are hitting specific keys, and the music it makes is theoretically capable of rewriting the instrument in real time. Harlan paused. Or it kills you. Cole looked at the chair, then back at the hologram. What's the survival rate on the simulations? 40%. A silence settled over the lab. The ventilation system hummed. Somewhere in the glacier above them, ice shifted. That's better than Oslo, Cole said. He wasn't wrong. You understand, Harlan said carefully. Not a question, but the shape of one. That if the sequence does activate, we don't know what it activates into. The models suggest enhanced cellular regeneration, possibly neurological integration with electromagnetic fields, but document. Cole cut him off, gently. I've seen what they're doing to the sky. He looked up at the reinforced ceiling, as if he could see through it to the siphons above. Whatever I turn in, it has to be better than what we are right now. Harlan Voss had run 43 computer models. He'd consulted 17 colleagues. He'd written 9 drafts of an ethics review board submission that he'd never submitted because the ethics review board had been quietly dissolved by Federation advisory pressure. He looked at Drayton. Lie back, he said. The nanites went in at 11:04 p.m. on a Tuesday in October. They were introduced via 4, a solution that looked like slightly cloudy water. Almost nothing, the kind of thing you dismiss as a failed experiment if you didn't know what to look for. Cole felt them as a mild warmth spreading up his arm and across his chest, then a pins and needles sensation that was less like pain and more like his entire nervous system turning its head to look at something. He kept his eyes open. The team, 6 people, the last of the people Harlan trusted, watched the readouts. Heart rate, stable. Neural activity, stable. Blood pressure, elevated but not dangerously so. The nanites moved through Cole's system in real time on the imaging screen, thousands of tiny signals like fireflies navigating a cave system. At 11:06, they reached the mitochondrial clusters. At 11:07, the readings began to change. Harlan. Dr. Yemi Osei was the team's neurologist, and her voice had gone very flat in the way that voices go flat when the speaker is working hard to stay professional. Neural activity is... I see it. That's not a biological pattern. That looks like... I know what it looks like. It looked like code. Not metaphorically, literally. The neural activity patterns on the screen were forming regular, recursive structures, repeating with mathematical precision, like a processor running a boot sequence. Cole's fingers twitched. His eyes, still open, had gone very still. Cole, Harlan said, stepping closer. Can you hear me? Yeah. His voice sounded normal. Too normal. Somehow. I can hear you fine. I can also hear. He paused, frowned slightly, the way you frown when you try to tune in a distant station. The elevator motors. 3 floors up, and something above that. Something bigger. Like a signal. Very regular. Very cold. Nobody in the room spoke. The siphons, Yemi whispered. Cole could hear the siphons from 400 meters underground. At 11:09 p.m., his heart stopped. Every screen in Lab 7 died simultaneously. Not glitched, not flickered. Died. As if every electron in every device had simply decided to be somewhere else. The emergency lighting, which ran on a separate hardwired system, also died. The ventilation stopped. In the absolute darkness, someone made a sound that was half gasp, half prayer, and Harlan heard his own breath coming in shallow, useless pulls. He counted the seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In the darkness, something moved. The sound was wrong. Not the sound of a person sitting up, which involves the soft protest of muscles and the creak of furniture. This was a sound like static building toward coherence, like a radio finding its frequency. There was a faint luminescence gathering in the air around the white chair. Not quite light, more like the suggestion of light. The place where light would be if light were a choice rather than a physical phenomenon. Cole Drayden sat up. His eyes were open. In the darkness, they looked like they were lit from within. Not glowing, exactly, but active in a way that human eyes weren't supposed to be active. Like the difference between a painting of a fire and an actual fire. Every screen in the lab came back online at the same moment. Every screen showed the same thing. A waveform that Yemi would later spend 3 months trying to classify. A pattern that moved like a heartbeat but had the mathematical signature of a carrier signal. Cole opened his mouth. His voice came out in layers. The top layer was coal, slightly rough, marine flat, recognizable. Beneath it was something else, something that sat in the teeth-rattling frequencies below normal human speech, a subsonic harmonic that you felt more than heard. And beneath that, barely at the edge of perception, something that sounded like numbers. "I can hear the satellites," Cole said. Harlan's pen hit the floor. He didn't pick it up. What followed were 3 hours that Harlan would later remember in disconnected flashes, the way you remember a car accident. Not as a continuous narrative, but as a series of freeze frames with white space between them. Cole, standing up from the chair, moving to the center of the room, turning slowly as if orienting himself by something only he could perceive. Cole reaching out and touching the air 3 inches to the left of a wall-mounted sensor array, and the sensor array immediately rerouting all its readings to a display that hadn't been set up to receive them, as if the technology had simply agreed with where his hand was. Cole sitting on the floor, cross-legged, eyes closed, and the room's electromagnetic field. Measurable. Yemi confirmed it 3 times. Measurable and real. Pulsing in sync with his resting heart rate. Cole looking up at Harlan and saying, very quietly, "There's a gap in the Sci-Fi mesh at 73 degrees north. They rotate the coverage at 3 a.m. to recalibrate. For minutes of full atmospheric exposure. If you had something to transmit." He trailed off, looked at his hands, turning them over like he'd never seen them before. "What are you?" Yemi asked. It wasn't an accusation. It was the most genuine question Harlan had ever heard her ask. Cole thought about it for a long time. "I think," he said slowly, "I'm what we were always supposed to be." He paused. "And I think they knew. That's why they're doing this." He raised his head, and in his eyes, in those strangely lit, strangely active eyes, something cold and certain was settling like sediment. They found it first. The sequence. They knew what we'd become if we ever got there. "The blockade isn't about resources," Harlan said. It wasn't a question. The answer had been assembling itself in the back of his mind for months. All the pieces finally clicking into the shape they'd always been trying to form. "It's never been about resources." Cole shook his head. "They're afraid of us," he said. "They've always been afraid of us." In the silence that followed, Harlan became aware of something he hadn't noticed before. The ventilation had come back on, but the sound was different now. Lower, slower, as if the building itself had recalibrated around the thing sitting cross-legged on its floor. At 4:17 a.m., Cole Drayden walked to the lab's single external communication terminal, a hardwired system, isolated, theoretically unhackable, used only for emergency contact with the surface team. He didn't touch it. He stood approximately 2 feet away from it, closed his eyes, and the terminal screen lit up. The message that appeared wasn't in any language in the Federation's Galactic Standard Database. It was composed in the anomalous sequence itself, the unfinished DNA, translated in a signal, broadcast through a system that wasn't designed to send anything anywhere. Cole opened his eyes. "It's going," he said. "Where?" Harlan asked. Cole smiled. It was still Cole's smile. Lopsided, slightly tired, the smile of a man who'd seen enough bad situations to find dark ones almost comfortable. "Up," he said. Harlan crossed to the terminal. The screen showed a transmission log. Signal sent, frequency unknown, destination unresolved, beyond map space. "What did you send?" Yemi asked. Cole considered the question with the unhurried calm of someone who had just rearranged their entire understanding of the universe and found the new arrangement surprisingly peaceful. "A notification," he said, "to whoever put the sequence there in the first place." He looked at the ceiling, through it, past the glacier and the atmosphere and the siphon mesh and the cold black spaces between stars, his eyes tracking something none of the rest of them could see. "I'll let them know their experiment worked." Above them, 3,000 siphons drank the sky. Below them, in the ice and the rock, something that used to be human sat on a cold floor and listened to the music of the cosmos with ears that had never existed before tonight. The laws of biology, which had governed every living thing on Earth since the first proteins folded in the primordial ocean, had just been repealed. The Federation didn't know yet, but they would. Very, very soon, they would. In the next episode, Dr. Eris Thorne opens his eyes in a standard-issue government apartment in New Reykjavik and realizes he can see the Federation's blockade satellites as clearly as you can see your own hand. And he reaches out to touch one,